Welcome back, America. As you know, in every presidential election, this is Switzerland for Republicans. They are all welcome here. They all get asked the same question. I'm glad to welcome for the first time Vivek Ramaswamy from Ohio, a great, brilliant financier, but he's from Cincinnati. So we begin there. Vivek, welcome. It's good to have you on the program.
Good to be on. How are you?
I am great. First of all, are you a Bengals fan or a Browns fan?
Big Bengals fan. Very difficult ending it to the season, last two seasons in a row, but I'm a Bengals
Well, that may
fan.
end our relationship right there, Vivek. I hate the Bengals. But give us a little bio, would you, before I launch into my questions? Tell people who have not met you, have not seen you on Fox News or Fox Business or read your things on ESG and DEI. Tell us about Vivek.
Yeah, sure. It's Vivek, no big deal, but Vivek like cake Ramaswamy is my name, and I was born and raised in Cincinnati, as I said. My parents were immigrants from India. They came over in the late 70s and early 80s. I ended up going to a public school through eighth grade, private high school, St. X in Cincinnati, and then went to Harvard for college. Thought I was going to be a scientist. I was sort of a nerdy science guy for much of my education. Ended up getting into the world of biotech investing, had a successful career in that realm from 2007 to 2014. And then I started a biotech company that I led as CEO from 2014 to 2021. Worked on a range of medicines. 5 of them are FDA-approved products today, from diseases from a rare genetic disease in children to prostate cancer. That's probably the one I'm most proud of. I ended up stepping down as a CEO, though, to focus on a cultural cancer that was the one that threatened, I believe, Martin Luther King's dream and threatened the dream that allowed me to achieve everything I had in my life, which was this new secular religion in America that said your identity was based on your race and your sexuality. And I thought that was going to be dividing us to a breaking point, especially when it infiltrated corporate America and other spheres of our lives. So I stepped down from my job as a CEO. I wrote Woke Inc., and then I wrote another book called Nation of Victims. And I traveled the country speaking out about the risks of corporate power and state power combining to enforce this new orthodoxy. And, you know, as successful as I had been traveling the country, publishing books and op-eds and speaking, and I also did start another company called Strive to compete against BlackRock to offer an alternative view to the ESG orthodoxy in capital markets. I decided that the real problem was a missing national identity in America. And I think we're in the middle of this national identity crisis. I think there's a vacuum at the heart of the American soul. We can't answer the question of what it even means to be an American today. And that's what ultimately led me to take this most recent step to pursue the presidency.
Vivek, my friend Jack Butler, also a St. X grad, is the online editor at National Review. So I solicited some questions from him since he's a St. X guy. His first one is very good. Why is running for president more important than the work you were doing?
I don't know that it is more important. I actually think that this is a multi-front battle. I just think that the question at the heart of our nation right now is what it means to be American, and we lack a good answer to that question. And I think that we're looking for somebody who can revive the ideals that set this nation into motion 250 years ago. Basic ideas like merit, free speech, and open debate as our mechanism for settling political questions, rising to the occasion to step up to communist China, which I don't see enough vision on how we actually do it. And you know what? I think I'm going to be, this is not somebody else's vision that I'm channeling. This is a vision that I have personally developed. I have written 3 books on it. 2 of them are out. I've traveled the country. And I see that as a missing gap in the conservative movement, in the GOP, really in the pro-American movement. And so I don't think that that makes pursuing the presidency more important than solving higher education through offering alternative universities or through doing what I was doing in the private sector by competing with BlackRock and others with Strive. But for me, it's an all-of-the-above approach. And right now, this is the most important way to solve all of those problems by going upstream of wokeness, of transgenderism, of climatism, and go to the root cause, which is really this identity crisis at the heart of the American nation.
Do you expect this to be a domestic election or an election about national security? And by that, I mean the new axis of evil is in Beijing, Tehran, and Moscow, and they dominate this show almost every day. I talked to former Secretary of State Pompeo at the beginning of this hour about those 3 countries. What is this election going to be about?
So I think that right now our domestic policy and our foreign policy are intertwined. They're two sides of the same coin. And I think this election is all about restoring American identity. I'll tell you what that linkage is all about, where right now we're going to have to take on China, and it's not going to be very easy because unlike the Soviet Union in the last century, we rely on our main enemy for the shoes on our feet and the phones in our pockets. We rely on China for our modern way of life. In fact, that's part of the long-run Chinese plan, was that we can make the United States economically dependent on us to achieve co-equal global status. And they've nearly completed that project from 50 years ago. We can still fix that. I call for a declaration of independence from China. That is the declaration of independence of our century. But that's going to involve some measure of sacrifice. Okay, we've gotten addicted to buying cheap stuff. That's not going to be easy to unwind. However, I think we can make those sacrifices if we know what we are sacrificing for. And that's why it comes back to that question of reviving the idea of what it means to be American in this country. If we revive
let me ask you a couple of quick questions that I ask all presidential candidates. First of all, was Alger Hiss a communist spy?
Say that again?
Was Alger Hiss a communist spy?
I don't know, but good reason to believe
Harvard does not do its job anymore. Which house were you in at Harvard, by the way?
I was in Kirkland House.
Well, no wonder. Okay, no one knows anything from Kirkland House. They all quit and go.
Jocks, you know?
That's it, jocks, and they go off and they find tech company. Secondly, will you release your tax returns soon?
Of course. I believe in total transparency across the board. Tax, health, whole nine yards.
What's your net worth, Vivek?
It's been publicly reported at a little over $500 million, and that's in the right zip code.
Okay, that's what I want to know. That's a good zip code to be in. Will you self-fund your campaign?
I will begin by self-funding it. However, I believe in the importance of this being a bottom-up, grassroots-driven campaign. And so, you know what? I don't believe anybody should or could be in a position to buy up a competitive advantage. However, I've had success. I intend to use that to lift this campaign up, but it's going to have to be lifted all the way by a grassroots bottom-up movement.
How do people find your website?
Vivek2024.com.
Do you realize that Vivek is hard for people like... I have audio dyslexia. I mispronounce names all the time. Vivek, I know it rhymes with cake, but Selena had already told me that, and I still butchered it twice already.
That's all right. That's all right.
I know you're going to...
I don't mind it. I have as best efforts is all I ask. So,
all right, and now let me go back to my list of questions. Vivek 2024, is it Vivek.com?
It's Vivek2024.com. Vivek 2024.com.
Vivek. I'll get it right, Vivek. Have you read The Looming Tower?
I have not.
All right, I recommend it highly. In terms of understanding the Department of Defense, obviously you're a very successful, very smart guy. I mean, just obviously. Can you fix the Department of Defense procurement programs?
Well, I would like to think so. I mean, I think that one of the things that I think is true about a lot of our government agencies, including in our national security establishment, is they've gone so far awry that you can't reform many of those agencies from within. Certain of those agencies we're going to have to shut down and replace with something new to take their place. I'm a guy who's built companies from scratch. I've had success in building companies. I think that at a certain point, and it's part of what Schumpeter called creative disruption in the sphere of capitalism, I think we need a little creative destruction in the realm of government itself, where certain of those agencies, I will be shutting them down. And you know what? That doesn't mean that those functions don't need to exist. In many cases, they do. We just need to create a new apparatus to take the place of the one that already exists.
Are you familiar with the triad?
The triad.
You don't know what the triad is?
Which context? What
nuclear triad.
What's that?
The nuclear triad.
Oh, the nuclear triad. Yeah, you're talking about our new axis of sort of evil here.
No, I'm talking about the air, the land, and the sea nuclear deterrent that we won the Cold War with.
I have to admit, I'm not familiar with that.
Okay, it involves planes, missiles, and submarines, and it was a question that got me into trouble with former President Trump because he didn't know either, and he learned it pretty quickly, and he said he didn't need to know. But it does alarm me a little bit that your life has been in the sciences and in business, but not in defense, and the number one job of the presidency is commander-in-chief. What do you say to that? How do you get smart on that stuff?
So the number one answer back at you is you're 100% right about that. However, I think that we have gotten so ingrained in habit in how we think about these national security issues that I hope I will bring a fresh perspective. I believe as President Trump did, by the way, back in 2015 and 2016. And I'm a fast study. One of the things we're going to do in this campaign is a lot of my training. We're just going to open source it. We're going to tape it. We're going to put it out as podcasts so that people can understand how I learn.
Well, that's interesting.
So, yeah.
Who is your consultant? Who's your lead strategist?
I hired the strategy group. They're here locally in Columbus. That's Rex Elsass's operation, and Ben Yoho is the CEO of that group. He's the CEO of my campaign.
Do they know anything about national security issues? Because I love Ohio. I'm from Warren. You better get up to Warren because nobody wins unless they go to Warren and figure out something to do for Warren. What's in it for Warren is always my question. But does your team know anything about national security?
They do, and we're building it. And I want to be very open about being humble about this. One of the things I've learned is presidential candidates, they're trained to get a bunch of bullet points behind closed doors, then show up in public and try to pretend like they know everything. I'm the opposite of that.
Good Lord, that's refreshing.
Humility. And people need to learn, and I have a lot to learn. And we're going to allow the nation to watch how I learn. That's actually what matters more than what I know today.
What inputs do you read on a daily basis?
I read the Wall Street Journal, New York Times on editorial pages, both on a daily basis so that I can get both inputs in reverse. And so triangulate on the different views out there. But the two things that I will go every day without reading, will not go a day without reading, are the editorial pages of the Wall Street Journal and the New York Times.
Okay, out of left field, but out of right field, comes a question about Israel, the judicial overhaul law. We're talking about them to that. Tony Blinken has been there. Joe Biden's upset with it. Everyone's mad at them. Are you even yet vaguely familiar with what Netanyahu is doing with the judiciary in Israel?
Yeah, I'm watching it. I mean, he's exercising, I think, I would say undue executive power, it would seem. So I think that's a concern, but I don't know enough to say to offer criticism of them.
Okay, good enough. And finally, at St. X's, who is your favorite teacher and why?
Oh, wow, much to choose from. Well, I did like Linda Smith. She was an English teacher I had. Maybe she got an unfair advantage because I had her 2 years. She taught me something useful that stuck with me to this day, which is that if you can't write it down, you don't really know what you think. And I think she was dead right about that. I've now written 3 books. And
Vivek, come back often. I would love to talk more with you at length, and I look forward to that podcast because how you brief a presidential candidate and how a presidential candidate learns in real time is going to be a fascinating podcast. Vivek, 2024, thank you so much. Keep coming back.